Entrusted Women. It is great to be with you today, and I'm excited to introduce you to collaborator, writer, ghostwriter, Carla Haskins, who has a lot to share with you, and Whitney Gossett, who started in the entertainment industry, then became a literary agent, is now doing a number of exciting things that she is going to share with you. And ladies, will you tell us how y'all connected and how y'all know each other?
Absolutely. Thank you, Margot, for having us, and Entrusted Women for this amazing community that we're so honored just to speak into today, and just love everything that's going on within this incredible community. So I'm so excited to just have this conversation, but mostly for you all to hear from my dear friend Carla Haskins today. She and I have known each other for over 7 years. We have worked together in numerous capacities in the publishing space. And she's been my go-to person to have a lot of conversations personally and professionally about politics, race, publishing. She is my safe space. And so it's fun to get to have conversations about both professional things and bigger things, and most importantly, God together. So we've worked in the capacity in publishing, both in serving writers and also as she is an incredible ghostwriter that I get to represent now. She has worked in telling people's stories beautifully and has worked for New York Times bestselling writers. She's worked for leaders, CEOs, athletes, you name it. She's helped tell their story. And just, it is an honor that I get to stand beside her as her agent in this season of life.
Yeah, hi, Entrusted Women. I'm so excited to be here to share just a little bit of my story and my journey as a ghostwriter. I hope it's helpful to you. I didn't know you existed, so I'm so happy to discover all of you. And I'm excited for this conversation and to meet Margot and to learn more about what she's doing and a new relationship that we're forming. So it's just so great to be here. And as Whitney said it all, we've worked together, and it's been an incredible collaboration and partnership and getting into ghostwriting. And so let's do it.
I would go shoulder to shoulder with Carla no matter what color she was, because I love who she is and I love her giftings. And I recognize that as a Black woman, she sees things and experiences things and has wisdom that I don't have as a white woman. And so when we're talking about collaborators and my job as an agent is to match make an author and a writer, I want to always be aware that some stories that need to be told, Carla's going to have insight that a woman a white woman's not going to have. She's going to understand things and nuances in a story that are going to make the story better and more powerful and more dynamic and more authentic. And that's an incredible gift and something that we really need to be aware of and thoughtful about, because if we're really trying to share stories with the most impact possible, especially if we're talking about gospel-centric stories,
right,
then we need to honor the nuances in those that somebody with that experience can tell. And it's no different than when we do a medical memoir and we're trying to find somebody who's got some medical experience so they don't butcher, a hospital terms, right? We should take that same care.
Carla, can I ask you how you got into collaborating ghostwriting? What your entry point was?
Fell into it. Wasn't trying to necessarily be a ghostwriter. I am a writer. I've written my whole life. And many times it has been, behind the scenes. I've never been someone that wanted my name on the cover of a book. And so falling into it, honestly, helping colleagues in the local church. Turns out he got a book deal. I think we worked on like 8 or 9 books, something like that. And literally fell into it. He initially had a ghostwriter who I worked with very closely, who I learned a lot from. And these are both white men in the Christian publishing space. And I made a career change. And then obviously Whitney and I have had a relationship for years. And she said, honestly, what she just said, I recognize a gift in you. I think you should try this. You should go for this. And I was scared and excited at the same time. That's kind of how I knew, like, this is kind of something that I want to wrap my hands around. And I got really excited about the creativity, the creative opportunities, because, you know, honestly, for me as a follower of Jesus, I serve the most creative force in the universe. And so it wasn't just about me having so much confidence in my writing, even though that I do. I really have a lot of confidence in the creativity of God that's on the inside of me to tell stories from, you know, like Whitney said, from another perspective. And so I got real excited about the opportunity to be a collaborator with people who had stories to tell, who needed me to really help bring that story to life. So that was really exciting for me.
Yeah.
I think what's so crazy about a ghostwriter is your job is to be a ghost, right? It's to come beside. And I love that Carla started as a ghostwriter for a white middle-aged man. Like, I also think in this conversation, I want to make it clear, like, if you are a woman of color writer, that doesn't mean you should just be writing other people of color's books. Like, Carla's written for every color of the rainbow. And I think that that is, you know, part of what's so cool about ghosting is you are coming behind the scenes and you are learning somebody's story and you're finding something in it you can attach to. And one of the reasons I love working with Carla and I love working with you, Margot, too, is that 50% of ghostwriting is writing, but 50% of ghostwriting is managing talent. And it's being able to pull a story out of somebody. And it's about being a good listener, and it's about finding the thread, and it's making somebody feel heard. And that's a skill set that, you know, I saw in Carla, that I knew she could write, but I also knew she could listen. And I knew that people felt safe with her. And, you know, you can teach somebody. Part of what I do is helping encourage and train ghostwriters, and you can teach somebody, you know, some of the tangibles of how to outline a book if they're a good writer, or some of the strategy behind how you maybe organize a story arc, but you can't teach how to listen and how to make somebody feel safe.
I think when you were speaking, Whitney, about that, I think for me it is, I genuinely love the talent. Like, I think you have to genuinely value and love the people that you work with. What I mean by love, I mean a gospel-centered love. You have to find value and honor in every single opportunity, whether it's a white man, you know, a woman of color, you know, whether, it doesn't matter. You have to see them. This is just my writer's opinion. You have to value them as somebody who represents the image of God. And so that, for me, then I can value their voice. I can honor their story. I can value what they want to say without, you know, any issue, if you get what I'm trying to say. Like, you have to genuinely honor and value their voice and the author and their story. And I think you have to start from that space as a writer. You have to just kind of go, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This person is amazing. Their story is amazing. I love them. I can't wait to hear what they have to say. And that makes that managing talent piece that Whitney spoke about much easier when you come to the table with so much respect and honor and value for who you're writing for.
Can you like get down to the nitty gritty of like, do you go to people? How do you spend time with people? What does that look like when you're one-on-one with someone? Can you just show us what it looks like?
Yeah, I think it depends on so it starts, for me, it always starts with the author and the story, like what's comfortable for them, you know, depending on what their modes of communication, their favorite modes of communication is, right? I personally like to write it down. I like to type it, you know, I like to do it all kinds of ways. And so for me, it starts with research, and you have to, you know, get who this person is, the nuances of how they speak. Are there catchphrases that they like to use more than others? And so I always like to incorporate as much of their personality into what we're writing as possible. I tend to really like memoirs or self-help stories of that kind. And so it makes it really easy when you do that. And yeah, sitting down, although the pandemic obviously has made it really challenging, but I also do a ton of research. I mean, but that's just my style. I research everything about the person that I can find. Obviously, I look for their digital imprint as much as possible, and stories, their own stories, because I think we live our stories. And so we don't recognize how rich they can be. And so getting as many stories around moments, what magnified for them and why. I ask a lot of questions. It's almost like being a therapist a little bit. I like to do, voice memos and recording things. And you know how things come to you when you're not even trying to think about it, the story, and then you'll go, oh, wait, I could probably add that tidbit into it. I need to write that down or add that. And so for me, it's structured at the beginning, like how many chapters do we want? What's the theme of these chapters once we get that going? And then it's like, okay, how do I fill this in with as much meat as possible? And get creative with it. Well, I cheat now. I do transcripts.
Meaning you're having somebody else transcribe it for you.
I use a transcription service to transcribe the conversation so that I don't miss anything. And I also take notes, of course. Okay. But they help me because, words on page for me is powerful. So it kind of helps fill in the blanks for me. So that's one of my cheats. I get conversations transcribed. Oh my gosh. I didn't realize that I was going to love it this much, to be honest. Why it's a win for me is because I get to stay in the background. I don't need my name in lights. I'm not that person. But I just love storytelling. I mean, honestly, being seen and known and celebrated is kind of overrated, especially in this climate. Like, honestly, to have a platform and have to manage all of that, like, no, thank you. I've seen it. No, keep it far away from me. I'd rather people not know the heck who I am. I just get to write a fun book and move on. Like,
and the truth is, you can make a bigger impact sometimes without being seen. Like
100%. That's
the stories that Carla's gotten to help facilitate are so much larger than if she was trying to just build her story. And I think that's something that we maybe don't even talk about enough either. Like you are still making change, you're still making impact. And if you do a great job helping somebody tell their best story, like the ripple effects of that are huge.
As we're talking to, women of color who are writers, we need your stories, and we need women of color to help tell stories in a way that they haven't been told before. I'm just going to be so bold. Our voices have been missing, our perspectives have been missing, the nuances about how we live in life, what we can bring to the richness of stories, I think is missing. And not missing like it's going to be, revelatory, but just the depth of who we are as women of color and our experiences. I think it's like adding that extra spice to something you're cooking that you didn't know was going to make it just go, hello. That's how I see, women of color writers. And we need you. We want you to jump into this fray. It's amazing. The thing that came to me always was when I got my very first opportunity was I was scared as heck, because there's a lot of responsibility trying to take on someone's voice. But, I just said, don't despise the day of small beginnings. No story's too small. No, nothing's too small. And so again, to that whole value piece of honoring the opportunities that you're given. But yeah, I just feel like adding my little spice to it, is what makes it a lot of fun for me.
Can you say a little bit more about why it really is so important to be having more writers of color telling the story specifically as collaborators?
I think, and this is going to sound super oversimplified, but to be honest, I feel like there's such a richness in the exchange of the collaborative work. there's I'm sure there are other, industries where, people of color and people from the majority community work together, and there's this kind of opportunity for synergy. But I'm just going to go there. When we talk about race relations in this country, a lot of the issues are because we are ignorant of each other. We just don't know each other. We don't. Well, Black people know white people really well.
Come on,
But
come on.
white people don't really understand a lot of who we are. And I think, Whitney and I have worked shoulder to shoulder for years. And it didn't start out that, we had this deep relationship, but working shoulder to shoulder with someone on their work is very personal. It's deeply intimate and it's deeply personal. And I think there's a lot about those types of exchanges that can really, give perspective that neither side has ever had before. And I think it can help move the needle in the direction that we're all wanting to go. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know that there are a lot of white writers who trust people of color with their stories. And so it's kind of like when you and I were talking earlier, when you were saying, really want to equip writers, I really want to empower writers. Well, how can you, as a white female ghostwriter, create more spaces for women of color writers that maybe didn't exist before? Can you pass on some opportunities, or how can you be more of a gatherer as opposed to just an equipper? I'm not saying that you're doing anything wrong,
Yes.
but how can we kick this up to the next level?
Yes.
By working shoulder, how can we we need to kick this up a notch.
So I'm seeing all the benefits. Can you say anything like, as a woman of color writer, challenges you face, obstacles? Do you feel like there are opportunities you miss out on because you're a writer of color? I'd love to hear if there's any rub to what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely, I think there are opportunities that I miss out on just because I'm not in the room or at the table. And so it's like, okay, who's gonna say my name in a room that I'm not in before I even get there? And not that I want to be very careful that I don't make it seem like, oh, women of color writers need a handout. That's not what I mean. But we have to acknowledge that white Christian publishing is very white male, very white denomination, dominated. It's really challenging for people of color to get opportunities. Okay, but then you add a woman to that, ghostwriting, like I did for a white male. That's rare. That's like, that doesn't happen, and that happens really organically. And it was out of relationship. It was really out of relationship. So I think the challenges are, like with any level of work, is, I know for me, I was afraid that I was going to bite off more than I could chew, and feeling really confident in my abilities to do it, and trusting myself, and not giving in to, kind of imposter syndrome. Who do you think you are? Fighting those internal voices, right? That tell you, what do you think you're doing? And I think that's probably a universal challenge, but other than that, what?
No.
I said, you went,
for sure that it is, because I just found a little quote from Maya Angelou basically saying, the next book, they're going to find me out. They're going to realize I'm a fraud. So if she lives with it, it is absolutely universal.
Yeah, absolutely universal. Yeah. So my inner critic and, my inner voice and all that, I would say, is the biggest challenges for me. And then getting into spaces for opportunities that women of color writers just don't always get. But I also feel like we have to create our own tables and kick down our own, create our own spaces. Like, the days of waiting are gone. Like, we just have to storm the castle.
In terms of, sometimes the door will be opened, other times you have to push at it and beat it down. what are like ways that these writers can take those, if nobody's standing there opening the door, what are kind of strategic things that they can do to move forward?
Practical over here.
Yeah.
I think one is working on your writing craft. And so the craft of writing is just like playing the piano. It's practice. And so tell stories, work on the craft of sharing other people's stories and writing in other people's voices. So whether that is people in like your neighborhood newspaper, your church magazine, starting a blog, like work on that craft. I think the second thing is that don't be afraid to reach out to people and ask, what's your experience? Tell me how you started this. I know I'm always willing to get on the phone with somebody who says, I want to be a ghostwriter. I'm looking for an agent, even if I'm not the right agent, just to say, here's some things you should try to do. The other thing that we do a lot within Ghosty Pro is we have ghosts ghosting ghosts. And so a lot of times there are projects that a ghostwriter has that they need a little extra help on. And so being able to see somebody behind the scenes and do a little cleanup work for them and be able to help them a little bit, you can start to build your resume that way, get some experience, learn and see it in real live time. The thing about ghostwriting is that so much of it is invisible, and that's how it's supposed to be. And so it's hard to see the craft at work. And so I think it's people like you, it's people like Carla who are saying there's room at the table for all of us. Like, let me invite you into this world. And then I think it's reading. Really great writers are really voracious readers, and knowing what you like, what resonates with you, knowing what's in the marketplace, knowing what's selling well, be a good student. And some of that's just reading a lot of really great books in the genre, especially that you're interested in writing.
And will you tell us Whitney, at this moment, will you tell us what Ghosty Pro is?
And so Ghosty Pro is our ghostwriting agency. We represent ghostwriters, and we also train ghostwriters. And so what that looks like is we have a e-course that we're about to make public that's about 8 modules of really sort of the really tangible, practical advice of what it looks like. And when we bring a writer on, we handle all the dirty stuff. So I'm the bad guy. I'm the one who negotiates contracts, and we have a legal team, and we have a finance department, and we do invoicing. And I always say our writers should be the heroes of the story, and we should be the ones who are the bad guys. So whether that is saying you need to pay them, or this contract's not fair, or you need to answer your emails, or this project needs to get wrapped up, it's my job to be the bad guy. My job is I'm on the phone all day long with other agents, with editors, with publishers saying, what projects do you need help on? What do you have on your docket that needs a great ghostwriter? And then it's my job to be a matchmaker and say, who's the best fit to tell this story? Based on budget, based on personality, based on interest. I love knowing that there's a writer who's, secretly obsessed with tennis, and then for there to be a memoir about it from a tennis player that I get to match them up, or know that somebody is from Alabama and has these incredible roots in Alabama, and then there's a writer or an author that's got a story about their child in Alabama, and finding these sort of threads that can bring people together to make a really great match to ultimately tell a really wonderful story.
And Carla, I just want to close by asking you, you're eyeball to eyeball with a writer who's kind of been working on her own stuff, but she's interested in ghostwriting. What do you want this woman writer of color to hear? What do you want to say to her?
I would want to say to her, you can do this. It's really scary, but trust your gift. And honor your gift. If no one wants to just end up being, most people are like, they just want to be a writer, but to want to give your hand at ghostwriting, I think it takes a different kind of writer, if that makes any sense. And so if she's already got a sense that that's what she wants to do, I would tell her to honor her gift and use it, because I think for too long, it took me too long to get to the place of confidence that I needed to be, to trust and honor my gift. And I would tell her that eyeball to eyeball, honor your gift. It's a gift. It's easy to you because it's a gift, but honor it by using it. I think we've touched on the whole thing about Christian publishing being super white. I mean, I know that really well. Whitney and I worked together for years. And so I honestly think with people like you and Whitney, when you say you get all these gigs and you're like, I think these should go to some women of color writers. I think that we need to work on that shoulder to shoulder, right? How do we, that's Whitney's phrase. How Whitney's been an incredible advocate for me, and obviously she's a white woman who is invited into these spaces and places that I just wouldn't have had access to if I didn't have relational equity with Whitney. And so I think we have to recognize that, you know, women of color writers, honestly, we just don't have access unless we, for lack of a better word, sometimes have a sponsor or someone who is willing, like you and Whitney, to say, hey, this is who I am as a follower of Jesus, and I recognize that there's a vast a vacuum, and I want to give access to women who I believe in. I want to go further than just equipping. I want to empower I want to use my influence. I want to give my platform to someone else or to some others, because honestly, that's the only way sometimes. Not that obviously, supernaturally doors can't open. I'm just saying that's what this conversation can say is, hey, white women who have access to these spaces and places, how can we shoulder to shoulder give our seats, even sometimes, to others that we know are talented writers who just need the opportunity.